Hello, I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you for joining us here on Health Professional Radio once again. Going to talk with Dr. Greg Sylvester. He's Vice President in Medical Affairs at Seqirus, and he's joining us on the program to talk about their influenza vaccines, with the majority of doses coming from a specific cell-based technology platform. Welcome to the program, Dr. Greg Sylvester. Thank you so much for taking the time this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, Vice President of Medical Affairs at Seqirus, a bit of your background and how did you become involved with Seqirus?
Oh, well, those are some good questions. So I'm a physician by training. I've trained in both pediatrics and in preventive medicine. And so I'm a fellow of the American Academy of Pediatrics and the American College of Preventive Medicine. And my focus has always been on trying to prevent disease versus treat disease. And so getting into the world of vaccines was quite easy in that that's certainly the idea behind the whole vaccine movement. And so a couple of years ago, Seqirus was formed, and it's a influenza vaccine company solely, and they approached me, and it just looked like a great opportunity.
What is the background of your current work? We talked about a specific cell-based technology platform that I mentioned briefly. What's going on with your current projects?
Yeah, so that technology is pretty exciting, our cell-based technology. And what I would say is that my group, we work very closely with other groups within our company. So our clinical development group actually does the randomized clinical trials that are needed for the regulatory agency, the FDA, to license the vaccine. Many people think it's just as important after it's licensed to see if it's effective in the real world. So my group does the research on real-world evidence looking at this cell-based technology compared to the standard influenza vaccine and seeing how it matches up.
Now, when you're talking standard, we're talking manufactured vaccines apart from cells?
Well, yes. I mean, so if you think about it, the tried and true way of influenza vaccines for the last number of decades is an egg-based vaccine. Okay. We inject the virus into hundreds of thousands of to create influenza vaccines. And in fact, we still use that, and it's terribly important technology. We're just continuing to innovate, and so that's why we've moved to this cell-based technology.
Now, the science behind this new technology.
Well, you understand that with the egg-based, there's always the potential that the virus changes a little when it gets inside the egg. The fancy word is egg adaptation. Because it's a mammalian cell, it doesn't doesn't change in any way. So we find that typically these match to the circulating strains. And I think that there's some real world evidence to support that. And I think that that's the interesting and innovative part of this new platform.
Mammalian cells, specifically, are we talking certain mammals or any type?
Well, it's a well-known cell line, and it's only one cell line that we grow it in, so that it can be consistent and it's reproducible and of high quality.
Are flu vaccines the only vaccines that Seqirus manufactures?
Yes. So, our company, has a legacy of over 100 years. Mm-hmm. During the 1918 pandemic, or the Spanish flu, the company formed to try to make an influenza vaccine. Let's fast forward to 3 years ago, where our parent company spun us off, and now we're solely just an influenza vaccine company, and we make 3 different types of influenza vaccines.
Mm-hmm. And those 3, are they effective across the board as far as age is concerned, or are there certain vaccines for certain age groups? Because we're asked about flu shots no matter what facility we go to, whether it's urgent care or a routine visit with our primary care.
That's right. So I will say that the CDC, or the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, they recommend everybody get an annual flu vaccine if you're 6 months of age and older. So the vast majority of us get a vaccine that any one of us can take, a 6-month-old, a 6-year-old, a 16-year-old, 26 and above. We do have an enhanced vaccine that is licensed for 65 years and older. And what we do know is that at some point in our lives, our immune system starts to wane a little. And so what we've done is we've enhanced one of our vaccines and actually put an adjuvant on it to boost the immune system, offering better protection. So most of our vaccines cover the lifespan, but we do have a vaccine for 65 plus.
Why is it so important that everyone receive a vaccine on a seasonal basis or yearly?
Well, yeah. So we do know that this virus is a very interesting virus, and it constantly changes. And so, in fact, the viruses that circulated last year may not be the same influenza viruses that circulate this year. And so, in fact, the WHO with the Food and Drug Administration and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, they try to predict what viruses are going to come 6 months before the season starts. They give us their predictions, what they tell us to manufacture, and then it takes us a time to actually manufacture those to prepare for the flu season. So that's the annual issue around it, where in fact, if you think about other vaccines, they don't drift or shift or change, and so giving it may be lifelong immunity, or it may be 1 or 2 vaccines over the course of your life. Very different with influenza.
So what are the implications for someone who decides that they don't want to get a flu shot or has no intention of getting one?
Well, I mean, I think they run the risk of not only infecting themselves, but also their loved ones or their coworkers or their classmates or whatever else. I can tell you that when I was training, I can remember training as a physician, I can remember getting influenza, and it wasn't the common cold. I mean, high fever, muscle aches, my head felt like it was going to explode. I had sore throat and cough. I went to bed on a Thursday night and didn't get out of bed until Tuesday morning. When you get flu, it's not like, oh, I think I might have had flu, I had the sniffles. It hits you hard. So my recommendation, and more importantly, the CDC's recommendation, is that everyone 6 months and older ought to get an annual influenza vaccine.
We see these pushes of flu vaccines for humans, for pets on a yearly basis. How important is it for overall public health that these vaccines are shipped in a timely manner, and what does Securus do to ensure that its products are shipped in a timely fashion and in the quantities that are going to be needed so that none of our facilities run the risk of running out?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. What we really want to do is we want to be prepared. We want to make sure that physicians' offices, healthcare clinics, pharmacies are well stocked prior to the season. So it would be one thing for Securus to send all of the pharmacies the vaccine in October and November. Well, that's when they're actually doing most of their immunizing. So, in fact, sending it out early so they can make sure that it's stocked and that it's well it's appropriate in where they want it to be so that they can give it when they need to give it is critical for us. And we take it very seriously on making sure that we get our vaccines out early and often to the people that are requesting them.
Is there a website that you can give us where we can go and get some more information about flu vaccines, the availability, the different types, and a lot more information about your organization as well?
Yeah, so I think probably the best thing to do, well, we certainly have a website. It's called securus.com, SEQUIRUS.com. But in fact, that'll have some wonderful information for you. Probably another wonderful place is actually going to see your primary care provider or your healthcare provider, and he or she can provide some important information on getting an influenza vaccine.
Thanks for talking with us this morning, taking the time.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio with Dr. Greg Sylvester. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Transcripts and audio of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.